Abhijit Roy joins us. So the next 30-40 minutes on ETNA, we would be looking at all the aspects of the entire home improvement market. And I've been told that it's boomed like never before for the entire home improvement space. One, existing homes are getting refurbished. B, the residential real estate demand has made a comeback. C, the aspiration to really live in a better house, repaint the house which got affected because of COVID now seems to be coming back. So Abhijit, fantastic to have you back. I think my introduction has already brought a smile on your face that these are boom times for the paint industry.
So good morning, Nikunj. Yeah, it's been good so far, and looking good going forward as well.
Define good for us. Will it be better than last year? Do you expect that we are in for an absolute, dhamakedar, Dussehra and Diwali? What are the feelers you are getting? Because while the festival season is still about a month away, the preparation of stocking and talking to your dealers must have started at your level by now.
Yeah, so July, August, a lot of stocking has happened, in preparation for the Diwali month. And looks like that people are upbeat. They think that it's going to be a good season. This year is sort of a non-disruptive year for us as well. Earlier, the last 4 years we have been having some disruption or the other, whether it was demonetization, GST, wave 1, wave 2. At least this particular year so far, it looks like that people have got used to this pandemic now and looking forward to a good Diwali. So the season looks good coming up. The second reason is that I think people are staying at home much longer these days. Work from home still continues, and then when you stay at home this long, you tend to look at your walls possibly more, tend to paint slightly more. You don't have also avenues for spending elsewhere. So the restaurants, hotels, the tourism which was there earlier. People spending money on those things have got saved now, and so possibly one of the reasons why some of the money will be diverted into doing up the home, including the paints, of course.
So let's understand the volume growth which you've reported. How much of that is a function of pure price? Commodity prices went higher, you took a price hike. So that added to top line, which normally wouldn't have not happened.
So volume growth was pretty strong. Actually, in the first quarter results that we reported so far, the inflation was not built in. The price increases that we took will get reflected in the second quarter partly, and all of it in the third quarter. So what you saw, in the first quarter was primarily volume driven. Of course, the bases were low. So, that impact was there on the positive side. But it was primarily volume driven, not so much, the value inflation that you are talking about. A part of that, as I said, will get reflected in quarter 2 and all of it in quarter 3.
Once you take a price hike, and even if commodity prices come down, do you roll them back? Because let me give you example of a vada pav stall which is around my house. Every time he increases prices, even if prices come down for oil and potato, he never cuts it down. So is the paint industry the same, that once you take a price hike, if commodity prices come down, you don't roll it back?
Because so far the history suggests that that doesn't happen, and if the commodity prices do come down quite substantially, the prices are rolled down as well. It's a competitive industry. No one is there who will allow you to have excessive profit. When you are competing, there will be people who will get tempted thinking that by price inputs they can gain market share. People react and therefore the prices come down. It is not like as if but whenever the prices come down marginally or moderately, I would say, until that point of time, if this is not a sustainable thing, we don't drop the prices. So it depends on the situation, but history shows that whenever there has been a prolonged drop in prices, we do cut prices as far as our end output is concerned.
All right, understood. Hi, Mr. Roy. This is Mubina as well joining in.
Hi.
Apart from the festive season, what we've seen in the last couple of months, and I think you as well in your conversations with us have given some hints of that, is a pickup in realty, a pickup in construction as well. I remember the last time we spoke, you had mentioned that after many, many years, finally construction is picking up. Now, since the time we last spoke again, there's been another development, and that is we've seen realty sales go through the roof. So what I'd like to understand is what's the correlation you see, for paint sales, for decorative paint sales with housing sales?
So of course there is a correlation, because as housing sales go up, new houses come up, they will go in for painting. Typically consumers, when they move into their houses, they will do the painting. And also whenever the real estate industry is doing well, the buildings also get painted in the exteriors of them, where the maximum consumption happens. Now, these were stalled for some time, in the last 1 year. It was coming up at a slower speed than normal, which has picked up momentum. And as you rightly pointed out, that's going to help. So therefore, all those pending projects which were waiting to be painted are coming up for painting, which will help us in, registering higher growth rates. But the percentage is relatively small. The real estate industry contribution to our total paint consumption is around 14-15% maybe. So therefore, it's not as if it's going to have a tremendous impact, but it will add to the overall growth rate.
Okay. 14-15%. So it's a little on the lower side, but yeah, nevertheless, it will sort of definitely, boost sales. How have you seen repainting cycles shorten over the last couple of years, especially the last 1 year, because like you said, as people have stayed indoors very long, that itch to upgrade your own home sort of then increases. So how have you seen repainting cycles, move, and also traction from the smaller towns, not just metros? Because I think that's where there's more action currently for the paint industry.
Yeah, so the repainting cycle has definitely a little bit improved, of late, because of, as I said, the people staying at home and tending to do up their walls, a little bit more frequently than they would have otherwise done. As far as the upcountry markets are concerned, the smaller towns, we continue to see good growth there. It started last year was, of course, an unusual year because there was very little COVID impact there on the upcountry markets, and they were doing really, really well. This year, on that high base, the growth rate is still there, but not at those levels which was being registered last year. On the other hand, in the urban centers, which were a bit depressed last year because of the fear of the pandemic, there the growth rates have gone up because of the slightly lower basis there. So overall, the growth rate is robust, largely because of both the urban centers doing relatively well and the rural areas continuing to do well.
Right. Abhijit, just an extension to the point that you were earlier making, because, I remember last quarter when we were chatting, you said that exterior painting demand was actually higher than interiors. Has that changed in any way?
Well, typically in the season, when the season approaches, like, now September, October onwards, the interior paint also comes up strongly. Large number of the interiors of the houses tends to get done at this stage. So this trend has started already. It is visible on the ground. And then as things progress right up to November, possibly up to Diwali, this trend will be strongly visible. From November onwards, again, the exterior season, actually starts, and the exterior sales peaks, in the November, December, January period.
what percentage of sales are higher? Is it repainting or is it new coating? Because I'm trying to get a sense of what's happening with construction activity as well, which has clearly been stalled for the last 7 to 8 years. And I'm obviously trying to understand more on whether or not these new home sales and the revival which is coming in are these pre-owned sales or pre-owned homes, or is it new construction which is actually seeing an uptake?
So, if you look at the proportion of business that comes out of repainting, then the proportion of business that comes out of repainting is much higher than that of new homes. But, the new home growth rates are higher today because of as you said, the momentum which is built up in that segment. So therefore, the growth rates that are being registered there might be higher. But overall, if you look at it, the repainting segment is much, much bigger than the new home sales, new home, paint.
Lot of industries, Abhijit, are using the word like boom and demand like never before. Which is the right word to capture the mood and the underlying demand trend for the paint industry? Boom like never before or incremental improvement?
I think it is too premature, Nikunj. At this stage, our main season is just approaching. I will be able to tell you much, better, this question can be answered probably around mid-October will be the right time, when I would have seen how the season is shaping up. As things stand now, I think, it looks good. Whether it will be booming or whether it will be, not booming, but, higher than, much higher than last year, it's difficult to say at this stage, because it's just the beginning of September. Typically, things will be becoming much more clearer around the 20th of September.
All right, Abhijit. I hope that next time when we meet, we use words like, you use rather words like boom and demand like never before. Appreciate your time and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nikunj.
With our special series today on what is happening with the home improvement segment, we've got a sense from Abhijit Roy of Berger Paints that things are looking up, but it's only in October they would tell us whether the festival season was incremental positive or this is absolute boom time. But the other big sector where the demand trends I think have been quite appealing both on the export front as well on the domestic front is the entire vitrified tiles and the home tiling industry. And it gives me great pleasure to bring on board Mr. Amarendra Kumar Gupta, CFO with Asian Granito. Mr. Gupta, you are in the business of ceramic floor tiles, vitrified tiles, polished vitrified tiles. This is a business which automatically is a proxy to consumer demand and new housing demand. Could you broadly tell us, and I'm talking about the domestic market, what has changed, how the demand trends are? Because your industry is hyper competitive. You've got unorganized player, you've got organized players. What are the trends there?
Good morning. Half of the industry is now unorganized player. It was 80 to 90% were unorganized players. Slowly after the implementation of GST and NGT orders for usage of gas, the industry has slowly turned to organized sector. Now there are a lot of branded players who are working on. Now earlier tiles was a luxury item, and so people were using it rarely in their kitchens, in their washrooms. Now it has become a necessity. The change of the look, the aesthetics, everything has changed. Now, in last 6 to 7 years, earlier it was soluble salt and double charge items which were ruling the market. Now it is purely GVT tiles, full-bodied GVT tiles, which is now ruling the market, and it is going to rule because of the look, the designs it can generate. Earlier, now stone, kota, granite, everything has been replaced by tiles. So now, even if you see the projects, the builders, earlier it was their important item was sand and cement, and they used to give plaster of Paris and whitening on the wall. But now they keep a portion reserved for the tiles. So this preferences in the industry has totally changed. in the last 2 years, due to lockdown and other scenario, people are living in home and they are looking for a change in their look of their home and the feel of their home. Even in the hygiene factor also, if you see, tiles are now giving you antibacterial functions, hygienic functions. So people are going towards the tile. That is why this industry from 35,000 crore is now expected to grow up to 1 lakh crore in next 4 to 5 years. So there is ample scope of development. What we are looking at is this scope of development. India does not need to import anything from outside. The local developers, the local manufacturers are supposed to give all this segment from their own factories. Right now, the major tile cluster, 90% of the tile cluster is located in Morbi, Gujarat. This cluster is now catering around 1100 factories and is catering the demand of entire Indian industry, as well as around 35% it is exporting to outside market. This export is certainly outgrowing it, and the local demand is also outgrowing. Now, if you see, the tiles demand in US market is also growing. Earlier, they were very much dependent on granite and stones. Now they are looking after the tiles. So slowly and gradually, the people in the organized sector are putting on R&D efforts, and new segments are getting developed. The technology is also getting new. If you see, earlier it was screen printing, border printings. Now everything has gone to digital printing. So if you earlier it was you have to make big lot like 5,000 boxes, 4,000 boxes, 1,000 boxes. It has
I
now converted to
understand.
smaller lots.
I understand the big picture, Mr. Gupta. I understand the big picture. I'm completely with you when you say that, look, there is a change. It's a mega trend where you want better houses. You are going ahead for, you are going ahead for cleaner. Hygiene is a priority. So tile is a change in terms of preference and affordability. But my question is that, what are the demand trends indicating? Because the industry which you represent is also a very competitive industry. If you have to talk about your positioning and your view on demand ahead of festival season, how would you summarize it for us?
See, there was a corona factor earlier. After that corona factor, industry bounced back significantly. Almost there was a 30% growth in the industry. And even after the second corona wave, there is a regional lockdown. Thereafter, the industry has bounced back very heavily. Now, what we see that the huge demand is coming up during this festive season also. People are looking now. Builders are completing their projects, and people are looking for moving into the new projects. So tile demand is going to be remaining high. And what we see that this year, for pan industry, not only for Asian Granito, for pan industry, the demand is going to be high. And it is the listed player, it is the branded players who are going to make a cut out of it. We are also looking for a double-digit growth in the market, which was not possible last 3 years back. The government push on the housing sector has also put up the demand. You see, a lot of state governments have now focused on school renovations, housing sector, even in PMAY Yojana. In urban area, government is pushing for 1 crore houses. In the rural area, government is pushing for 1.93 crores of houses. So these are going to improve the tiles demand in the market. So we are very positive on tiles demand. We understand that this market is going to absorb whatever we are going to produce now, because the market is going to double itself in a shorter period of time. So the demand is going to stay and demand is going to increase. So we are very optimistic about it.
Well, that's great to know. Hi, Mr. Gupta. This is Mubina as well joining in. So, if the market, and I know you're talking about the overall industry, and all the green shoots that are visible as well, the promise coming in, not just from housing but from schools as well, like you mentioned. How will Asian Granito's revenues as well grow from here on? Is there any target you're putting in place, and also your volumes in general? What you sold, let's say, in the last 2-3 odd years, how do you see it increasing, from here on?
See, what we see that we have earlier, last year, we have made a sales of around 1,300 crores. We expect that this year we will be touching around 15 to 1,600 crores. And by next year, we will be touching around 2,000 crores. This is what we are expecting from the market, because the demand is growing now. And in terms of volume, we are going to add another 35% in the volume in very shorter period. Like we are doing around 3.5 million square meters, and this will grow up to 4.5 and 5 million square meters in a very shorter period of time. So this is a very healthy sign for the industry. There is a very healthy sign for the demand. I'll just mention some of the states. Like in Kerala, still there is some regional lockdowns are there, but demand in Kerala suddenly shoot up. The builders and other people are working, and there is sudden demand. States like Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and Karnataka have shown very promising picture. Similar pictures have been shown in the north, and a special mention to the west, where the recovery was very fast. Right now, Asian Granito is historically it is 30% in south, 30% in west, 30% in north, and 10% in east. Now, in this after the second wave, west has given more picture. Like now we are doing 35 to 36% in the west, which has been cut down from the south. South has been lifted from the month of July, second half of July. South has lifted itself. In the first half, in the first quarter, it was not there. So industry is hungry. Industry is hungry for the material. There is an ample supply of raw material from the Rajasthan mines. Mines have developed in Rajasthan. There are ample supplies from Andhra Pradesh. And this mines development coupled with the money that has been put in Morbi development, it has actually increased many-fold. Means even in Asian Granito in 2003, from 2003 to 2021, we have grown 40 folds. And what we understand that in another 3 to 5 years, we will double ourselves from what we are here in another 3 years. So we personally understand that demand is very heavy. The industry is going to grow, housing sector is going to grow, and people's preferences will be on tiles, and it will remain. Earlier, there were no a lot of designs were not there. So any design you put in the tiles, it will go for 3 to 5 years. Now the period is shortened. With the introduction of digital printing machine, you can get many more designs. Asian also has more than 1400 designs. And
right.
And
Mr. Gupta, Mr. Gupta, I just had one small follow-up question actually on something you mentioned about how there's plenty of availability of tiles. You know, mines are getting developed, etc. So there is a lot of availability, there's a lot of supply, and guess what? There's a lot of demand as well. So this, these two factors coming together is pretty conducive for the smaller and unorganized players to continue, going forward. So I just wanted to understand that what gives you the confidence that this unorganized, cluster, in Morbi, etc., will continue to become smaller and not become larger, especially when demand and supply both are in plentiful right now.
See, I'll tell you, in Morbi, there is a lot of demand for export production, so which is growing manifold. And today, the export market is around 14 to 15,000 crores, which we are expecting that it should grow up to 35,000 crores. So even there is a lot of unorganized player coming in because raw material entry barrier is low. Capital requirement is somewhere around 100 to 200 crore to put up a big project. So even if the outcome is there, the production is there, that is going towards the export. In domestic market, the demand will be on the branded player, because even there is a lot of unorganized player, but the reach of unorganized player is not outside Morbi. So they have to be dependent on branded players and large scale players to sell off their products. Even if this unorganized player are selling off their product to builders and all, but that will be limited to within some states, some territories in Gujarat only. So there is no big threat from this unorganized player to the branded players. The branded players are going to stray because we spend on branding, we spend on celebrity endorsements, we spend on brand enhancement, our product R&D, which is actually appealing to the consumer. If the product research and development is not there, which is not from the unorganized player, it's only from the organized player which they are doing at the moment. So there is no real threat from the unorganized player. However, whatever the production that is getting increased, domestic as well as export are absorbing everything. That's a very healthy sign for the industry.
Right. Amarendra, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking with us. In fact, let's continue with our home improvement theme and let me get on board Keshav Bhajanka, the ED at CenturyPly, joining in on the show right now. Keshav, hi, good morning. Good to have you on the show as always. We were just chatting with a paints manufacturer, then a tiles manufacturer. All of them are seeing a fair amount of buoyancy given the revival that one has seen as home sales. Has that been your experience as well? Has business grown many-fold in the last 5 to 6 months?
Yes, definitely. I think it started off last year itself. And, post the opening up of the economy, the organized sector in the plywood industry did far better. And within the organized sector, I think we were growing substantially better than most. This year, again, the same trend has continued, and we have seen quite a few good months post-May. As you know, May was a little slow, but post that, we have seen a good recovery.
Where is this recovery, Keshav, coming in from? Because, not just domestically, but globally, one is seeing a very strong revival in home sales. That said, within India as well, there is a stark contrast between what's happening in Tier 1 metro cities and what's happening in Tier 2 or Tier 3 towns, and then, of course, rural India as well. Where do you see the strongest demand revival really coming in from?
I think when you look at the plywood market, it is twofold. Firstly, what we are seeing is that yes, the real estate sector is reviving, and that has played a major role. As you know, that the industry was in a little bit of turmoil for the past 5 to 6 years, and now you're seeing the cycle change. Now you're seeing real estate sales increasing, and I think this is a very positive trend, and looks like this is going to continue for the foreseeable future, at least for the next 3 to 4 years. Secondly, what has happened is the unorganized sector is in a lot of trouble right now because their working capital is tough. And secondly, despite whatever demand upshoot has been there, the raw material costs have also shot up. So this has reduced their margins substantially. As such, the unorganized sector has been struggling, and this has been fueling the growth for the organized sector. For us, I think the recovery has been all across. We have seen a good recovery in Tier 1, Tier 2 markets and in the metro cities. So I think overall, there's a very positive sentiment all across the country. Certain markets, yes, have been hit for a small period of time. Maharashtra was hit earlier in the year. Kerala has been hit now. But other than that, most of the markets have recovered very well. And this is right throughout, from the larger towns to the smaller centers.
Okay, so good morning. Nikunj also joining in. It's a pleasure to connect with you. I was looking at some data, which is that if I look at the global trends versus Indian trends, in India, 70% of the total demand is plywood and 30% is MDF. Globally, I think the number is slightly different. Why is that? And if that changes in India, what does that mean for you?
I think, it's very difficult to compare India to the developed countries, so to speak, because there, the technology is different. The cost of manpower, if you look at manufacturing furniture, ready-made furniture is in vogue because it's very difficult to get a contractor. The cost of the labor in order to get customized furniture would be perhaps more expensive than the materials by 3 or 4 times. But if you compare us to China, in China, the total plywood market is about 200 million cubic meters per annum. Whereas in India, the plywood market is 10 million cubic meters. The MDF market is 60 million cubic meters, and in India, it is less than 2 million cubic meters. And the particle board market, there's about 45 million cubic meters, which again for India is less than 1.5 million cubic meters. So I think in all these product categories, there is substantial room for growth. And going forward, I don't think we'll see such a big shift, but yes, because of the low base, MDF and particle board should do relatively better. They might grow faster than plywood, but I would expect to see growth in both, in all these 3 segments rather.
There are 2 large trends which are visible in the business which you are present. One, unorganized has become organized. That's where large part of the growth for a large listed player like yours is coming. But second is that you also moved into branded players. I mean, I'm getting my house constructed, so I can, vouch for it that how good some of your branded products are. How does that change the long-term operating picture for a company like Century? Because it's like a twin propeller. You're gaining market share and you are taking the product profile higher to branded businesses.
I think we've been working on this for quite some time. So we have always tried to give our customers the best-in-class products. So over the course of the past year and a half, you have seen two new innovations from the house of CenturyPly. The first being Virofill technology and the second being firewall technology. But alongside that, another innovation that we have come up with, which is the Century Promise app, whereby you can make sure that your products are genuine and they are not fake due to QR coding on each and every single sheet, has been rolled out as well. So our effort is always to give our customers the best-in-class material, and we have tried to upgrade the products in our industry in general. Whatever products we have come out with, if you remember Bora-proof and termite-proof in the 90s, they became the industry standard. So we are trying to improve the profile of products across the industry. And I think this continuous push on innovation has held us in very good stead. And going forward, this is going to form one of our strategies for the foreseeable future.
Keshav, a question I've been meaning to ask you, never got a chance, so I'm going to use today's forum, which is that in today's time, investors are very, very choosy about investing in companies which filter the criteria of ESG. Now, I don't think there is a problem in terms of the governance. I don't think there is a challenge in terms of what is happening to the industry, Indian industry in terms of ESG compliance. But how does a company like Century fit in the ESG promise? Are there questions which have been, are your investors asking you tough questions that you're a plywood company and how can you increase your ESG footprint? How are you handling this entire ESG outlook?
Actually, there's a very negative perception about the industry, but if you look at plywood, it is a carbon positive industry. The reason I'm saying that is because in order to make plywood, you need agroforestry. And without demand, agroforestry actually reduces or it stops. And we have seen this in numerous parts of the country. When we entered into Hoshiarpur, plantation timber was reducing year after year because there was no demand. After our manufacturing unit came up, the forest cover there or the plantation cover there has increased drastically. So plywood is actually a highly environment friendly product. Plywood causes an increase in plantations, which otherwise would not take place. Farmers are only going to plant crops if there's demand for the same. Otherwise, there's no reason why they would get into it. So I think plywood as a product category has been misunderstood. And when we speak to investors and when they understand this dynamic, for them, it is a change in perception altogether. They realize that plywood is actually beneficial to the environment as opposed to what people were thinking earlier. So next year, we're going to come up with our first ESG report. And I'm hopeful that, that will be able to answer quite a few of your questions. But going forward, things like ESG are very, very positive for plywood companies in general and for Century Plywood in particular.
All right. Hi, Keshav. This is Mubina as well joining in. In the last few years, what we have seen is obviously the emergence of a lot of e-commerce websites and stores that offer ready-made furniture. Right now, of course, IKEA as well has popped up. I think what we are seeing is this trend of fast furniture for Gen Zs, for millennials living in metros and cities. They're very quick in wanting to upgrade their homes, and I think that's been further egged on by the fact that we've been living indoors for the last 1 year. Keshav, if we look at this entire ready-made furniture market and if demand for that increases from here on, accordingly with real estate sales, etc., how does that bode for the product profile you have, for ply, for MDF?
In ready-made furniture also, there are two segments. If you look at residential ready-made furniture, there's a substantial demand for plywood in the same. Of course, for commercial spaces and for others, for the cheaper products, there is a substantial demand for MDF and particle board furniture because of the advantage in cost. But what we have seen, with IKEA coming in with Godrej and other big manufacturers is they want quality products. And we are one of the few companies that can provide the same. So they become our customers and that leads to a growth in demand. So I think that this is a big opportunity for us. Going forward, as ready-made furniture increases, MDF and particle board should do very well in this segment. And for residential ready-made furniture, plywood demand should also accelerate. So I think that this is going to be a big opportunity, and we are already working on what product solutions we can provide so as to make life even easier for these OEMs.
Yeah, exactly. You know, because I myself in the last 1 year have already made plans of revamping my home at least 10 times, though of course implementation on my end has been a little slow of all those plans. Keshav, want to talk now about input costs. And not just, you know, what goes directly into the product, but also in terms of what happens after the product is made, when you have to ship it out, you know, from your factories and from your units to the distribution centers. Freight costs, they are soaring. You know, container costs are obviously surging as well because of the sheer lack of containers around the world. I know you do have overseas trade as well that is involved in your operations. So just wanted to understand what's it like now in terms of raw material costs and in terms of you know, freight cost, distribution costs too.
Raw material costs have increased drastically. I think, you know, you've hit the nail on its head. But thankfully, being a market leader, we have pricing power. And we have been able to pass all the raw material cost increases to the market in the form of price increases. This is something which the unorganized sector has not been able to do. And even some of the organized competitors are finding difficulty in doing. So I think that, you know, for us, this can be looked at as a negative and a positive, because at the end of it, the unorganized sector is further facing margin pressure, and long term, that is going to hit them hard. When you look at exports, our primary exports are laminates. More than 95% of our total exports are laminates. And as you know, laminates are a highly value-added product, whereas the cost in shipping freight can be easily absorbed within the product costing. So for us, this disruption hasn't been substantial. Domestically, yes, freight has increased by about 10-15%, but that has been absorbed in the price increases without any difficulty.
Keshav, always good to have you on the show. Thanks much for taking the time out and speaking with us today.
We are trying to understand the entire home improvement market. We've heard from the paint manufacturers, plywood and granite. Now it's time to understand that what is happening in the whole furniture retail space. The global leader in the furniture retail space is IKEA. IKEA is there in India, and I've been to their stores in Mumbai, in Hyderabad, and trust me, it's been in fascination. Kavitha Rao joins us, Country Commercial Manager with IKEA. Kavitha, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Kavitha, I must say that more than me, my wife is excited that you are on the show because she's a big fan of IKEA, and every time we travel, whether it is Singapore, Hong Kong, even Paris, we always make sure that we go to an IKEA store.
Good morning. Thank you very much for that. I think it is great for us to have customers who love the brand and the experience.
How would you, in your own words, capture the current trend for us? When IKEA came to Mumbai, it came at a very difficult time. They came in middle of pandemic, and your store in IKEA or in Mumbai, Navi Mumbai, has gone through its own challenges of start and shop. But when you analyze the trends and the footfalls, how would you summarize the trends for us?
Good, that's a very interesting question. I think at the outset, we have to recall the fact that we've all been at home for the last 18 months, and maybe it is now that people are just about beginning to step out. And that has also meant that home has really taken center stage. We have seen that people have demanded a lot from their homes in the last 18 months, and that has been a very, very positive trend for us in the home furnishing and the furniture space. And we can clearly see that in one of the recent research reports pointing to the fact that 80% of Indian consumers have done something or the other related to their home in the last 12 months. And that is a whopping big number, which is really, really good for home furnishing. When you look at the situation in Mumbai, you are right that we opened the store in very tough times amidst the pandemic, taking various kinds of precautions into account. In fact, we had a registration-based visitation process into our stores. And our big focus at that point in time was to make sure that we offered a safe experience to both our customers coming into the store as well as to our co-workers. So that was the most important aspect. We were not too concerned about the number of people visiting. We, of course, are looking at a 40,000 square meter store or 4 lakh square feet in terms of size, which is quite large. and it can take a lot of people. But we've been super cautious during that first phase. And as we came out of the first wave and things were beginning to come back on track, we saw people come in, people wanted to visit IKEA, particularly the store in Navi Mumbai, because of the fact that it is a fun day out for the family and a great shopping experience. And for most of us who love home furnishing, it is always a great visual treat as well. So that was the starting point. But unfortunately, we of course did have wave 2, which also meant that the store went through periods of closure and reopening in sync with the government guidelines. But overall, if I have to encapsulate the trend that we've seen both in Mumbai as well as in Hyderabad, people have really taken a lot of interest in home furnishing, and we are beginning to see customers come back and look at home furnishing. And I also feel that they clearly see that home furnishing is beginning to play a very important role in their lives. So that is an interesting trend that we are sitting on right now.
How is your experience in India been different from other countries? I mean, the fact that you are present across geographies in developed markets, in big cities like Paris and Singapore, where the per capita is high and per capita is stronger. In your experience of running the Hyderabad store and the Bombay store, what is that one big insight which you can summarize for us about the Indian customer?
I think the most important thing about India is that no average works. Sometimes we could see that maybe the spend on home furnishing is low in some pockets. But what is interesting for us to understand is that both interest as well as spending on home furnishing in the India market is very diverse. At the outset, if we say that on an average, there is maybe 4.5–5% of disposable income that actually gets spent on home furnishing, it is also interesting to see that in some income segments, it could be as low as 0.5%, and in others, it could be as high as 6%. This is something very interesting for us to take care of, because as IKEA, we strongly believe that home furnishing is for everybody. It starts with our vision in terms of creating a better everyday life for the many people. And I would really underline many, which basically means that we want to make sure home furnishing is accessible for everyone, irrespective of their wallet size. And that is really one India, which also means for us, we focus a great deal on affordability. And affordability is not just about product prices. Of course, we pride ourselves on the fact that we are everyday low price. But more importantly, it is about the kind of solutions that we can bring to life on an everyday basis. And it is these solutions that actually make a difference to a customer's home. So if you take a living room, it is about the cushion covers and the curtains, and it is not always that one needs to buy a new sofa to bring it a certain vitality or energy into the living room. So the solutions are very, very important for us. And that is, again, another area where we really try to look at affordable home furnishing. But at the end of the day, we are also about saying that irrespective of what the size of your wallet it is, you will find something for yourself, for your home at IKEA. So that is one key fundamental principle that we've been working with in the India market. And if you compare that with the global trends, affordability is important in every single market. It is not that a Parisian customer does not care about affordability. They would also like to have the best value and the best product prices. So it is something that IKEA globally commits towards across the many markets that we operate in. So there are, of course, similarities with global markets, and there are some nuances and differences, particularly, as I said, in India, where no average works. We need to spend a lot more effort in terms of understanding and making sure we are relevant for every segment of our consumers in the country.
You know, Aisha and me, when we talk about the success of IKEA, we always discuss this punchline of IKEA that till the time customers will prefer price over time, companies like IKEA will always be in business. So my next question to you is that India is again very complex, because here the labor costs are low. We had the management of Century Textile, and when I asked him that why in India the MDF market is small and plywood market is big, that's largely because of availability of the carpenter and the labor. How do you think IKEA would be able to overcome this image of furniture which is made by MDF versus affordability in India where plywood and labor cost is low?
Sure, I think I do agree that labor market in India is very different and labor costs are low. But as an end consumer, maybe what all of us are most concerned about is the product and the solutions that we put together. And when I talk about the product, what is it that we want? We want a product that is very functional, which basically means it meets the needs of our home. We want a product that has the right price. As an Indian consumer, we all look for value for money, irrespective of thick or thin our wallet is, right? And then, of course, we all want quality. We sometimes relate to durability as a proxy for quality. And then in recent times, we can also see that consumers have a certain demand for design and form, something that is visually pleasing. And in recent times, we again see that people are much more focused in terms of sustainability, and they really care about what does it mean when I consume a product, what does it mean to the planet or my community. So when we are putting together product design, we are taking into account all of these 5 key elements that we call, and something that we call as democratic design, which really brings together various aspects in terms of bringing a product to our consumers. And I think as consumers begin to understand this nuance, they will see the reason why they are paying a certain price for a certain function or a certain quality, and the fact that it really contributes in a positive way to the environment as well. When it comes to the topic of MDF and ply, I think one of the most important aspects in the India market is for us to have greater awareness. Today, we do have challenges in terms of certified wood within the country, which is also something that we are working with various government bodies in terms of how do we move more towards certified wood, which also is good for the environment. It is not a scenario where we are cutting down trees and using it to make furniture, but we are also looking at sustainability from that standpoint. And then from a consumer standpoint, one of the other important aspects to look at in terms of materials is also what is the emission levels. In most of the markets across the world, consumers have, and manufacturers have, and retailers have translated to E0 and E1 boards, whereas in India today, we still have higher emission boards. And this is also another area where we need to move India towards the global standards in terms of emissions related to boards. And these are 2 important aspects which come into play when we start to talk about what is the right material for the furniture that we really use at home or in our workplaces.
Right, absolutely. Kavitha, I understand that you're planning to open small format city stores as well, while we're as consumers very excited. But tell us, what's the thinking behind this?
Very well, Aisha. In fact, our thought behind this is to make IKEA more accessible for consumers. One of the first cities where we really announced the launch of the first small store format is Mumbai. Mumbai is a large city with over 20 million people, and we see that one store in Navi Mumbai and e-commerce in the market might not be sufficient to meet the needs of the consumers, which is also the reason why we would like to be more closer to consumers in our markets, which is why we've announced the first small store format in the city. And then the other topic is also to think about the fact that the consumer today is omni-channel. In our mindsets, we are not thinking about, am I going to the store or am I going to an online website? As a first step, maybe if you want to buy a new sofa, we open up a search engine and type sofa on it. And that is where the customer journey starts. Most of the research today points to the fact that 80% of the customers' journeys start online. And of course, some of them could end online. But a lot of them, particularly in spaces such as home furnishing, could also lead consumers to visit a physical format. It is in this context that we see that a smaller store format would bring IKEA closer to consumers, particularly in megacities, where, of course, we always have the challenge of commute times and traffic. And maybe in recent times, in the post-COVID environment, people also want and relate much more to their neighborhood rather than traveling far out. So this is the main reason why we're starting to look at smaller store formats. And it is not just in India, but across the world, IKEA is believing that we need to make our brand much more accessible to consumers. And so we will look at more formats over and above the standard store, which is close to about 40,000 square meters.
Yeah, absolutely. It becomes quite a trek to frankly go all the way to Navi Mumbai. So I guess the city store would really be of help. Kavitha, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Have a good day.